table tennis, there are powerhouses. China through to the men's team event, to the semis. And there are darlings, the Lebrun brothers, powering France. Why Korean Taekwondo, no longer Japanese karate, features at the Olympic Games. We'll tell you that story. Taekwondo, one of those sports where Moscow would have raked in the medals. We ask about a Games without the Russian flag. We begin this edition of Destination Paris in the 15th arrondissement of Paris. We're at Yangshan Chu's Chinese restaurant, 3 blocks away from where the table tennis and the volleyball is happening. And we're in the company of Daily Beast contributing editor Craig Capitas. What is for lunch?
Spicy, dry shrimp, Francois. And you know something? For food this good, it gets you to thinking. You know, there's more to the world than just French food, French athletics, Anglo food, Anglo athletics. You know, this stuff here, this eats here, just as good as anything you can get at Ducasse or Le Tour d'Argent.
All right, I went for the steamed fish, the Szechuan-style steamed fish with the cabbage, salted cabbage. Yeah, this restaurant has become the home away from home for both Chinese athletes and for the wider Asian community.
Well, not only that.
They even got a write-up in the New York Times.
Yeah, well, what this restaurant tells us about Paris that a lot of people don't know, we really are an international city with international cuisine far and beyond French food. And when it comes to Asian food, a place like Yangshan Chu's is just one of the best. And it's amazing that the Asian athletes and the Asian visitors to Paris found this place in the 15th arrondissement.
Yeah, it is amazing. We have, it's a small place. They've got the 69-inch screen where they're watching the events. They'll be keeping an eye throughout. They have been on the table tennis, but not only. And one last question for you before, hey, don't pick at my fish.
What? Go ahead.
Well, one last question for you, Craig. Before you couldn't get good Chinese food in Paris. Now
That's
you can.
true. That's true. And I suspect after the Olympics, it's even going to get better.
All right. Something to watch for. And by the way, we were talking earlier about table tennis. Selena Sykes has been following for us the men's quarterfinal. Here's what she has to say.
Spicy.
It's safe to say that in the south of Paris, it's definitely Lebrun mania, the pair of brothers who have just beaten Brazil in straight sets alongside Simon Gauzy, the third member of that French team in straight sets. A simple, comfortable victory for them against the Brazilians. It wasn't the duo that everyone was obviously dreaming to see in the doubles match, which was the first set. Instead, it was Alexis Lebrun pairing up with Simon Gauzy, who is the third team member. They won the first set comfortably. It was then Felix, the 17-year-old prodigy, who won the bronze medal in the individual event in a rematch of that match against Hugo Calderano, a rematch of that match that Felix won quite comfortably, a 3-1, seeing off the Brazilian, which meant that Alexis, his brother, knew that if he managed to win his game, that it would seal France's place in the semi-finals, and he did just that, also winning a 3-1 quite comfortably for the older brother. We spoke, Francois, about Lebrun mania. Well, I can tell you that I've just learned, because there are a massive amount of fans here watching the pair in the south of Paris. It's quite a remarkable atmosphere, so much cheering, so much screaming for this pair of brothers who've really captivated the nation, I think it's safe to say. Well, I found out that there's a nickname for their fans. It's Le Q, which stands for Collective Ultra Lebrun. I don't quite know how to translate that, but it's basically their big fan club here in the French capital. They're quickly becoming one of the faces of this Olympic Games, with the likes of Léon Marchand. Of course, both of them are still very young. They're very active on social media and have a big following, not just here in France, but we should also add especially Felix in Asia, where obviously table tennis is massive. It's a really big sport over there. You've had a lot of Asian fans here in the arena as well. They have quite a fascination, particularly for Felix, obviously after getting that bronze medal. A lot of admiration for the both brothers. And now, of course, Francois, they have set up a big semi-final, a massive semi-final against China on Friday. That will be no easy feat because they have in their team 2 Olympic champions and 1 world champion.
Selena Sykes, many thanks. As you can see, we're back in the studio with Craig Capidis from the Daily Beast. Craig, sounds like we should go back to the restaurant for that semi-finals, France versus China.
Absolutely. One of the interesting things about having lunch there today with many of the Chinese fans, and in fact, there's over 3,000 Chinese journalists in town, was watching the games on Chinese state TV in the restaurant. How excited people were getting over.
And they're excited about Felix Lebrun, says Selena.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Better than Carl Lewis, Michael Phelps, Katie Ledecky, Cuban wrestler Mikhail Lopez. He becomes the first Olympian to win gold in 5 successive games, 2 weeks shy of his 42nd birthday. Lopez following it up with the announcement of his retirement at the top of his game. Oliver Farry has that story.
In a packed cinema in Havana, Cubans celebrated the final victory of their greatest ever Olympian as Mikhail Lopez won a record 5th successive gold. The super heavyweight wrestler beat his Chilean opponent to become the first athlete ever to secure a gold in 5 different games, enshrining his status as a legend for his fellow Cubans.
It's the best, although with him we're used to it. We knew that this medal was his because this is the 5th consecutive one. Nobody achieves that. Only he did. He's the Cuban pride for us, really, honestly.
There's no one greater. He's the greatest, an idol. For Cubans, he is a legend, an absolute legend. 5 medals out of 6 Olympics. 5. Because this is his 6th games, winning 5 golds. This is Olympic history. Mikhail Lopez.
There were celebrations too in Lopez's hometown of Herradura in the far west of the island, where his mother proudly looked on. It was a fitting close to a career for a man from a humble farming community, having been at the pinnacle of his class of Greco-Roman wrestling since his first gold in Beijing in 2008. Ahead of the Paris Games, he spoke of a new approach to counter the effects of aging.
I've been able to motivate myself more. Motivation, I think, is the main thing to achieve this goal. Since the years are unforgiving, the fatigue is there. The pains in the body are there. But my head has to be strong.
It was a strategy that paid off. After his victory in Paris, Lopez left his boots in the center of the ring, signifying his retirement. It will be a long time before his sport, or the Olympics as a whole, sees another competitor dominant for so long.
Joining us for this conversation on Destination Paris is France 24's Leo McGuinn. Thanks for being with us. Plenty of fan zones for these games. France 24, a proud sponsor of one of them, Station Afrique, that's in the northern suburb of L'Île Saint-Denis. That's also host to the Athletes Village. James Andre is there. James, I can hear it's festive behind you.
Yes, absolutely. It's festive behind me. Now, you probably have heard of the Station Afrique already. It's around 40 African countries that are represented here. Most of them have their own tent. It's the case of the Democratic Republic of Congo. You can see behind me that today it is a special day for the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Democratic Republic of Congo, who's not done so well as a country during these Olympic Games, with 0 medals. They had 6 athletes competing, and just earlier on I was speaking to the ambassador of the Republic of Congo to France. He was telling me that, yes, of course, there was disappointment, that, of course, a lot of people were hoping that some of these athletes who've actually medaled in African competitions might make it here, but he was also saying that, of course, the pressure and the competition here at the Olympics is of a complete different level. In any case, it's going to be a big party here with stars that are going to be playing on the big scene here behind me later on, including a rapper called Franglish. Franglish is a real big star. He's going to be singing in Bercy later on this year. He's expected to fill that up, and he'll be playing for free tonight here at the Station Afrique, which is obviously an awaited moment for the community here. Just one word about this place, which is l'Île Saint-Denis. L'Île Saint-Denis is also home to the Olympic Village. The people living here, speaking to the mayor early on, have had to put up with 8 years of work, but they all got a ticket for an Olympic event, and of course they are absolutely happy that everything is taking place here in these 23 days of an incredible African festival here on this island.
All citizens of l'Île Saint-Denis got a ticket for the games.
Absolutely, that's what the mayor's been telling me, and he told me that, yeah, there is a real fervour here. Obviously, it's been a challenge. There's only 8,500 inhabitants here on l'Île Saint-Denis, which is a very small village, if you will, on an island in the Seine, and there are 85 nationalities amongst these 8,500 people. So you can imagine this is like a melting pot. A lot of African people, of course, and of course, this place is an opportunity for them to have a good time during these Olympics. There are games, there are football matches that are organised. There's also a lot of stands. You can eat local food from various countries. Every night a country is honoured in these big events. So, yeah, it's a real festive moment here for all these people. And, of course, all the people of Seine-Saint-Denis, which is this northern suburb of Paris.
James Andre, many thanks for that live update. Leo McGuinn, sounds like the mayor of l'Île Saint-Denis did a better job scoring tickets, 8,500 of them, for his constituents than the mayor of Villeneuve d'Ascq, where the basketball was hosted. He was complaining that the Olympic Committee was slow to parse out tickets for...
I'm not surprised they look so happy behind it. They all get a ticket to these games. Depends what it is, of course. I'm sure some of them have got better tickets than others.
Leo, I cannot help but notice that you're sporting a green necktie.
Do you like it?
Do tell us why.
Do you like it? It's nice, isn't it?
It's not bad. Craig, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Did you go swimming in the Seine?
I didn't. I went to purchase this very expensive tie, and coincidentally, I'm here to talk about Ireland. I'm here to talk about Kelly Harrington in particular. Boxing gold medal for her last night. Back-to-back golds for her. In fact, she won in Tokyo 3 years ago, and she won again last night against her Chinese opponent. She said afterwards she's 98% sure she'll retire. It's not a bad way to go out, is it? But it's more symbolic than just a gold medal, because that makes it 4 golds in these games for Ireland. They've never done that before. 4 golds is an incredible...
For a nation of 6 million.
For a nation of 6 million people, 4 golds across 4 disciplines as well. You had the rowing, Fintan McCarthy and Paul O'Donovan. You had Rhys McClenaghan on the pommel horse. Of course, Daniel Whiffen in the 800 metres swimming. And now Kelly Harrington in the boxing last night. The atmosphere at Roland Garros was incredible. Irish fans stayed late. Her whole team, they sang after the victory. Our producer, Siobhan, was there actually... I think that's maybe why her voice is a little bit hoarse today. But for Ireland, it's such an incredible achievement. In 1996, they won 3 gold medals. That has a little bit of an asterisk next to it. Maybe better we don't talk about it. But 4 gold medals in 4 individual events is incredible. Between 1960 and 2008, Ireland won 3 gold medals in that amount of time. So 4 in 1 games, it really is amazing. 7 medals overall, beating London as well. It's Ireland's best games of all time. And this is why I'm wearing such a wonderful green tie.
Craig Capitas, before these games are out, we will be ranking who we perceive to be the best fans at these games, and certainly you could say per capita that the Irish have more than held their own up in the bleachers. There's so many of them in town.
Go to a field hockey game. The Dutch.
The Dutch and the...
Craig's not having it. Craig's not having the Irish fever. But...
All right. Well, we can talk about the Orange Army, and we will. What we saw today was we talked about French success, but you win some and you lose some as well.
Yeah, it's a real disaster for France, this, actually. They're out of the handball. They lost 35-34 to Germany.
They've had a bad tournament up to.
They've had a bad tournament. They lost twice in the group stage. They drew to Egypt as well. But more than that, it's the first time Les Bleus haven't reached an Olympic final since 2004. They've been so dominant in handball. They've won 3 of the last 4 Olympic finals. So losing in the quarterfinals it's such a big blow. It's a disaster for them. And they were poor throughout the tournament. They actually led by as many as 7 points tonight. Their goalkeeper, the French goalkeeper, was amazing, but in attack, France just looked a bit toothless. What makes it even worse, France had possession on the final, they had the ball on the final possession of the game. 6 seconds to go, they gave it away. Germany equalised and it went to extra time and they won. So they've only got themselves to blame. There'll have to be a reset for the French handball team because this tournament was poor.
Are the Karabatic brothers past their sell-by date?
I think so.
One can wonder. And we saw among the events that have taken place this Wednesday, amazing feats. It's the first time that climbing as a speed sport has been a medal event, and it got Poland its first gold of these games.
Yeah, Alexander Miroslav dominant throughout these games, and she capped that dominance by winning gold, as you say, Poland's first gold of the games. A huge moment for her. She was the bronze medalist in 2023 at the World Championships. She broke the world record in Tokyo, and she's done it 9 times since then. So she has been the dominant force in the fairly new sport of speed climbing since then, and it's a very much deserved gold medal for her.
Of course, it wasn't dominant in the final. It was a very tight one.
So close. It was incredibly close. And it was nice to see both of them embracing after the final, her and her opponent, her Chinese opponent. They had a nice hug afterwards. So the Olympic spirit at play there, you could say.
Many thanks, Leo McGuinn, for that. We saw that we were talking earlier about Mikhail Lopez, the wrestling taking place at the pop-up venue from across the Eiffel Tower that hosted the judo. Taekwondo getting underway this Wednesday at the same Grand Palais that last week saw fencing. This is just off of the Champs-Élysées. Taekwondo introduced as a demonstration sport, Craig Capitas, in 1988 when the games were hosted by Seoul,
South Korea. A political sport. Very interesting sport, pushed by Dr. Eun Kim, a South Korean, who demanded that this sport come into the Olympic Games. And he spent years pushing this. And he spent so much time pushing it and bribing for it that in 2004, he was sentenced to 2 years in prison on charges of taking money and embezzling money from the Taekwondo Federation and the National Olympic Committee of South Korea. He was also charged with bribing North Korean officials to allow their athletes to march alongside South Korean athletes at the Sydney Games in 2000. And he had a habit of handing out expensive watches with his face, his portrait on the watch face to people, and would say it at Taekwondo. A fascinating man, completely committed to this sport, which has boomed in popularity.
I was going to ask, because Dr. Kim is gone, but Taekwondo remains. In the old days, you had karate, which is a Japanese martial art. That's no longer in the Olympics. Taekwondo stayed.
Yeah, it stayed, and this is because of the resilience of the South Koreans. They desperately wanted to have one of their sports in the Olympics, and if they had to push karate out of the way to do it, well, they had no problem doing that. And it is very successful, very popular. A lot of young people in France and around the world take Taekwondo, and Dr. Kim used to challenge you to, in the old days, he'd say, come on out on a mat, and he'd take you on. He loved showing people how to do Taekwondo.
And we've seen countries like Nigeria win medals already this year. What we haven't seen, though, is Russia. Russia, which won 6 golds in Tokyo.
Yeah,
in Taekwondo.
The past 2 weeks, I've talked to athletes, officials, and fans, and not one of them misses the Russians. Not one of them told me that they care that they're not here. But you mentioned the word Ukraine, and the cheers start. I mean, what can I tell you, Francois?
Taekwondo was a big part of that for the Russians?
Yeah, well, it was. Yeah, any medal they could win, legally or illegally. Remember, the Russians had been banned for doping.
Right.
And back in the Cold War days, they were the masters of doping with the East Germans. They were suspended in 2019 for 4 years, later reduced to 2 years. They got caught, doping in Sochi in 2014. It's a really corrupt regime. The former head, Vitaly Smirnov of the Russian Federation from 1971 to 2015, was a KGB agent. The Olympic Committee was used. There's stories on this that we wrote years ago. The Russian Olympic Committee was used to launder money around the world. It was a washing shop. And, I feel sorry for the clean Russian athletes. There's 15 of them here. But the sad fact is that nobody cares that they're not here. No one I've spoken with.
At the last Olympics in Tokyo, Russia won 71 medals, 20 of them gold. Now, as Craig was saying, after more doping scandals and that invasion of Ukraine, their athletes can only compete without their nation's banner. On state television, Paris 2024 has either been denigrated or ignored. The resentment aired even before the opening ceremony had been deemed ridiculous.
We shouldn't put up with these affronts. It's a matter of principle. I wouldn't go if I were in their place.
They have to go. They've worked so hard to get where they are.
If our wrestlers hadn't been excluded, we could have won 3 medals, perhaps gold. Who believes that the Paris Olympics is still a competition between the best in the world?
Craig Kapitas, your reaction to those interviews conducted on the eve of the opening ceremony?
Well, those are all Putin's sycophants. If they said anything else, they'd be sent to the gulag counting birches.
But there is a nationalist streak in Russia, and there is this feeling that everyone's out to get them.
Of course there is, but I cover Russia on a daily basis in my real life, and there's a lot of frustration with the Putin regime in Russia. These people have to say this. Of course, they'd like to see their athletes here, but that's the price you're going to pay. And by the way, and this is really important because I think a lot of our viewers don't get this. The IOC banned Russia from these games, not for invading Ukraine, but for once they invaded Ukraine, taking their Donbass region and the other regions that they had, taking their Olympic Committee, the Ukrainian Olympic Committee, shutting the door and saying you're now part of the Russian Olympic Committee, which was a violation of IOC rules. That's why Russia is not here.
The pole vault this Wednesday, featuring the final taking place this Wednesday. 0 Russians. This is the sport of Isimbayeva. Contrast that with the joy when Ukraine's Yaroslava Mauchik took gold in the high jump earlier this week, as seen at this watch party in Kyiv. Mauchik objects to even 15 Russian athletes participating.
We clearly know where these athletes came from. They didn't say a word against the war. They didn't speak up or call for peace. And I believe it's very sad because the Olympic Games are about peace. And wars were stopped during the Olympics. But Russia did not stop and heavily attacked Ukrainian cities. How can a terrorist be admitted to take part in peaceful competition?
Craig Kapitas, your reaction to that?
Well, I think she's being a little bit too nationalistic for my taste, but I understand, what she's saying. But I think you got to go back and look at what the Russians are doing. This conflict over the boxers, whether they're men or women, which we've been discussing. This was a provocation started by the International Boxing Association, which is funded by the Russians, by Gazprom. This has clearly been a provocation by the Kremlin to cause this...
to make mischief at the Games. Yeah. So let me ask you one last question on this. We talked about Seoul 1988.
Yeah.
It was the Cold War. It was the first Games since you hadn't had boycott and reverse boycott. 1980, the Americans stay away because of the invasion of Afghanistan. 1984, retaliation. The Soviets don't go to Los Angeles. What's 2028 going to be like?
I think it's going to be like this without the backdrop of Paris. I given with social media and everything else, I sadly don't believe. I believe that the Russians not being at the Olympics, nobody really misses them. Nobody cares. Of course, we'd like to see them come back, but they're not coming back so long as they have Putin in charge of this country and they're dopers.
Leo McGuinn?
Yeah, I don't think it's a short-term. I don't think it's a short-term exclusion. It's hard to see a Russian delegation of any sort in LA in 2028, isn't it?
And this is not good for Vladimir Putin's reputation in Russia. I lived there for 10 years, and I can tell you the Russians love their sports. And they're great sports people, and attending events there are terrific. They're not happy with this. And it's all Putin's fault. It's not the IOC's fault. It's no one's fault but Vladimir Putin's.
The Russian less athletics taking place later, and that's, of course, going to be among your big features in 90 minutes' time.
Yeah, I'm trying to be less cliche, but I've got written down there here, another big night at the Athletics. So I guess I will just be as cliche as usual.
Go ahead, say it.
But of course it is. Another big night at the Athletics. The Russian-less pole vault final for the women's. One of the showpiece events will be the men's 400-metre final. The big question there, can Kirani James win a consecutive Olympic medal in the men's 400 metres? He's won medals at the last 3 games, gold in 2012, silver in Rio 2016 and bronze in 2020. So if he could claim another medal here, that would be history there. He's 31 years old now, but he was the fastest in the semi-final, so he does have a good chance. But Matthew Hudson-Smith of Great Britain will look to stop him. We've also, of course, got the men's 200-metre semi-finals. Looking at Noah Lyles again. It's supposed to be his race as the 200 metres. The 100 metres is just a bonus. Actually, Lyles boasts a 17-race winning streak in the 200 metres at major international events. He will face an onslaught from his competitors, namely Kenny Bednarek, the American, who will be looking to beat him. And he was only a matter of milliseconds off him in the American trial. So that will be a hell of a battle between them. But Noah Lyles going for the 100-metre, 200-metre double. And it's hard to say that he won't do it because...
And relays behind that?
Relays behind that as well. Yeah, so he could win 4 gold medals.
What about chances for Ireland tonight? What are we looking at?
Well, Ireland have very good chances in the 400 metres, but the women's, and that's not till Friday. So fingers crossed for that. Semi-final tonight, though. So fingers crossed for maybe a 5th gold medal of the Games for Ireland. I don't know.
We shall see.
It's possible.
That's the thing.
At that point, you'll be able to expense that green tie.
Yes,
Many thanks, Leo McGuinn. I want to thank Craig Kapitas. Thank you for joining us here for this edition of Destination Paris.